This week, we have a technical segment focused on Linux because everyone loves Linux. Actually, that's kind of why we're focusing on Linux, because the audience seems to love it. So I got a script that will give you a good handle on your Linux supply chain security. I've added some new features to it so that you can do some checking of your secure boot certificates, which are getting ready to expire from Microsoft very soon. In the security news, the CVE chase, the new security basics, enterprises are lacking more than AI, detections are falling behind, why Doom, Chromium vulnerability even, the ambitious Flipper 1 project. I'm still curious who is behind these specific leaks. Mitre moves Caldera to the Apache Foundation, Wind Cybersecurity, PQC updates, YellowKey Bitlocker Bypass updates, and the software supply chain is in deep trouble. All that and more on this episode of Paul's Security Weekly. Broadcasting live from G-Unit Studios in Rhode Island, it's the show where exploits run wild, packets aren't the only things getting sniffed, and the cocktails flow steady. It's Paul's Security Weekly. Coming to you from the Hacker Syndicate Studios, this is Paul's Security Weekly. This is episode number 928, being recorded on Wednesday, May 27th. I am joined by Mr. Josh Marpet. Josh, welcome.
Hey, always good to be here. Lots of fun.
Yes, Mr. Jeff Mann is here with us.
Ditto, ditto, ditto. And
happy birthday, Jeff.
to me.
Happy birthday, Jeff.
It's the year of the Beatles.
That's it.
When I'm 64.
So we have no announcements this week, so I am going to jump right into the technical segment. I'm going to share my screen.
What have you been up to lately, Paul? Tell us about it.
Yes, this is very much what Paul's been up to. So I focused this week's technical segment on a script that actually it was already released, but I made it better. So it's an updated version of my supply chain check shell script. So a little bit of a history behind it. I created a supply chain cheat sheet based on a lot of research that I was doing and for Eclipsium. And so I took that and I was like, hey, Claude, can you go create a shell script based on my Linux supply chain cheat sheet? And I was like, oh, yeah, that's easy. Like the source material is already there. I ran it. I tested it a little bit. It worked good. I went back to it this week with a couple of really big features. Well, I think they're big features. The first was based off the news headlines. So many articles about how Microsoft is getting ready, or Microsoft has expiring certs, basically. So this isn't a revocation. These are certs that are already deployed inside of Secure Boot that are expiring. And what does that mean? So many articles have tried to explain what it means, and I think have done a very poor job. So when I set out to write a blog post about it, because the first expiration is actually June 27th of this year, so coming up in about a month, exactly a month from today, those certificates will expire. What does that mean? So I set out and I wrote a blog post. I had Claude help me with that blog post. I chained different models together to get what I thought was a really good blog post. And then I sent it to a couple of folks, in particular, shout out to my coworker, John Lucades, who has forgotten more about UEFI than I will ever know. And it passed with flying colors, right? And there were a couple of sections that we're still working on researching and validating. John was like, dude, this actually looks good. I'm like, I'm kind of impressed because I used AI to help me generate it. And I sanitized it and I did my normal, checking. I read it top to bottom and made all kinds of modifications, not too many modifications. Then I took that blog post and I fed it back into Claude. And I was like, hey, help me build into the script a way for people to check if you've got the expiring certificates on your system. Claude knocked it out of the park. I actually looked at the code behind it. It looked pretty decent. Probably not the way I would have coded it, but it looked decent. And more importantly, I've tested it on several systems, and that part's working really well. as far as I can tell. I mean, test it on 3 systems, right? So go test it. Let me know. Send me pull requests. The other option I added that kind of sparked this idea that I had more than one system that I wanted to run this script against, and I'm like, I really don't want to copy this script to all of my systems and then have to maintain it. Like every time I make an update, I'd have to recopy it. So it's like, hey, Claude, can you build in just like a remote way to run this over SSH in the script? Now I had to iterate a couple times and make some changes and direct Claude, but Claude built that functionality in. So you now have a new option called remote. You specify the remote host name that you want to run the script against, and which checks that you want to run against it, which is pretty wild. So let's take a look at, well, I guess first, let me see. Yeah, let's just do -H here. So this is running on my local system. So you got a few options here. You can run all the checks. You can list the check categories, and then you can check all of these different categories. So it does a whole bunch of stuff to check the secure boot status. Is secure boot enabled? It checks things like your BIOS version, firmware, Intel ME, microcode, TPM, all kinds of stuff. Now, it requires certain utilities. If they're not there, it'll just skip the test. But it tells you what you need to install. It's like, hey, I ran this check. And if you install the official Intel CSME utilities, I can run those for you and I can summarize the results, which it did.
Can I interrupt you
awesome.
real briefly, Paul? And I just want to confirm what I'm looking at. Is it true that AI is finally getting developers to the point of actually writing well-documented code? And
dude, it's one of the greatest things about using an AI coding assistant is it writes fantastic. It does the
no wonder
boring
you
work.
Guys love it so much. And
it does the board. Like this would be so tedious for me to write by hand. Like I'd have to document.
Well, I'm looking
each
at it,
command
like
line
there's
option.
no way Paul wrote this.
No.
Oh, the AI wrote this.
Right.
But what's interesting,
now,
it goes farther
now I'm
than
catching
that.
on to.
But what I like is I can write the cheat sheet or like a document, and then Claude can take that and translate that into well-documented code. Without that,
And it goes farther than that. I have Claude and various coding assistants writing the test suites while I'm writing the code. So it actually puts and builds into the Git. So builds into the source code all the test suites for all the different functionality. So as I write more stuff and I go, okay, test it. And it does unit tests against everything while we're working on it.
Yeah.
So
that's coming next for this project, Josh.
I do have actually one question though. The check categories, are they just automatically all done, or do you select them individually?
You can tell it -all, -A or -all, or you can select an individual test.
So the list, the -L for list,
we'll just
write
list
in
them,
the ones you want. Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha. It's been a while.
Somewhere right now, an attacker is testing the parts of your app your security tools cannot reach. The authenticated areas, the login flows, the hidden functionality behind credentials. Secure AI Navigator changes that. It automatically navigates real login flows just like an attacker would, exposing vulnerabilities and data leaks hiding behind authentication across user roles, session states, and authenticated API calls. No scripts to write, no brittle automation to maintain, just complete coverage in minutes instead of days. Because we didn't test behind login are the worst words in an incident report. Learn more at securityweekly.com/nowsecure. Yeah, it's super cool. And it got those right from my FAQ or my cheat sheet document, which is nice. Oh, also, I want to point out this shell script has reached over 1,000 lines. Usually my threshold is 100 or 2 lines of bash should be Python. So I'm violating my own rule here. And I will now, after this, release a new version and convert
you won't.
it to
You'll
Python.
have Claude write it.
I'll have Claude take the shell script, convert it to Python,
Right.
rewrite it in Python, I should say.
He
and then,
didn't say he would write it, Jeff. He said he would release it.
Right. But then, Josh, to your point, I'll have it build in tests for it. So then as I'm modifying the code, it can run the test and make sure we didn't break anything. And it does Python Bash gets too wonky when you get into, too much complex stuff going on here. So like the SSH functionality, admittedly is a little wonky. It gets really confused. Like if you run it with sudo on your local system and then it has to over SSH into a remote system and run sudo, it gets super confused. And I haven't sorted it out. But in Python, we have this great library called Paramiko, which implements SSH. So that'll be much easier to work with. So if I actually run all checks on this system, you'll see a whole bunch of stuff scroll by the screen. But I put up at the top, I just added this stuff. It tells you the host name, the operating system, and your kernel version right at the top, which I thought was kind of handy. And then it starts marching through the various things that it's checking. So the first one here is secure boot. In this particular system, I've not rolled a custom implementation of secure boot. Like I haven't done the implementation because it's trickier on Arch. But it is tells you your current bootloader, and then it goes through the certificates that are installed on your system. So even though you don't have secure boot enabled, that's just one check. You have UEFI variables that are stored on your SPI flash in the NVRAM partition. And there's different types of variables. There's access control lists on those variables. But you're allowed to, as the user from the operating system, read certain variables. The ones you can read are the variables that store your key exchange keys, your platform keys. I should have done that in the reverse order because there's a hierarchy. Platform key is at the top. Then you have your key exchange keys. Then you have your DB variable, which is a list of certificates and or hashes that represent software that's good to boot on your system. Then you have your DBX, which is another variable that contains certificates and or hashes of software that should not be allowed to boot on your system. So what's happening in the Microsoft scenario, you can see here that I do not have, I actually don't have any, I'll show you an example with certificates, but it's checking the KEK variable, key exchange key, because that's just a variable. Use a Linux utility called EFI var, EFI read. There's a set of EFI utilities that allow you to read from these variables. So it basically pulls all the values out of the key exchange key variable in UEFI and then looks at the certificates and hashes that are there and then does pattern matching and says, do you have the Microsoft CA 2011 installed on your system? If you do, June 27th is when that certificate expires. It's slightly off topic, but basically what that means is that key is used to sign the DB and the DBX. And so if that key expires, it means the signing of the DB and DBX is frozen in time. So if you get a new update to DB or DBX, it can't sign the new update because that certificate expired. It basically means anyone can deploy a new bootkit to your system and you can't update it because your signing key is expired. It's one of the functions of the key.
And all these KEKs are now available in post-quantum algorithms?
It's a good question. I'm not sure of the state of these certificates with respects to post-quantum, Jeff. Yeah, it's great. That's a great question.
If those are years, I doubt it significantly.
Now, it's interesting, though. It's more than... So a lot of articles, I feel like, made you believe that it was just this one key that's expiring. It's actually 3 different certificates that are expiring. The other 2 is the Microsoft Corporation UEFI CA 2011, and that's a certificate that lives in the DB. And what that certificate does is sign third-party software like shim for Linux so that Linux users can secure boot. So there's an entry in the DB that says, hey, any software signed by this key is okay to boot in the secure boot process. Very different from the key exchange key. It's also used to sign option ROMs, non-Windows bootloaders, things like that. Then there is an entry in the DB, another entry in the DB, also 2011. So all 3 of these are expiring. The Microsoft Windows Production PCA 2011. That's the one that signs the Windows Boot Manager and every Windows pre-OS component. And so some of the changes that they're making is they're kind of splitting out some of the various keys. It'll all be covered in my blog post and beyond the scope of this technical segment. But so if we go back to the output of my script now, it should make a lot more sense as it's checking the key exchange key. It says, hey, like you don't have anything in there. So the 2011 Microsoft CAC, the 2023 Microsoft CAC, not in there. It looks inside the DB and it goes, those keys aren't present, the old ones or the new ones. Microsoft, again, has split out. So there's like an option ROM signing key now. And then there's another UEFI key. So they've kind of split out option ROMs from the general third-party signing key. And there's a huge reason why they did that. Do you guys know what an option ROM is? Do you know there was going to be a test?
I do not.
I did not know there was going to be a test, but an option ROM is something I remember from my console gaming days, man. That's like an extra ROM with extra features and stuff.
Yeah, it's actually an extra driver. Not Windows driver, but a Dixie driver in UEFI. So there's like drivers that load in UEFI help initialize your hardware. So UEFI goes, I need to initialize this hardware, but I don't really know how. Like I could use some help with that. And so when you put a network card or something in your system, it'll come with an option ROM. And when UEFI loads and goes, hey, you got a network card there. I don't really know how to initialize that well. Can you help me out? The network card goes, yeah, I can. I have something called an option ROM, which is just I believe a Dixie driver that it loads into UEFI and gives it instructions in the form of basically a small program that tells it how to initialize the hardware, among other things, I believe. But that option ROM has to be signed, right? Otherwise, I could put a card in anyone's PC and basically load unsigned code into your boot process. So those option ROMs are signed. They've split it out so that when they have to revoke this cert or do anything with it, it's only affecting option ROMs. It's not affecting other third-party bootloaders or the Linux shim, which I think was pretty smart. So the script checks all of those stores for you and tells you if you have any of this. Because the big thing, too, is these are mutually exclusive, right? So you can have the Microsoft 2023 key exchange key installed. However, your DBX has not been updated. So those have to be updated independent of each other. So you could still be vulnerable to bootkits if your DBX is old, but you happen to be running with the latest key. So again, the blog post I'm going to publish on this will dive into that. But I built all that in the script as a really nice check because a lot of people have a question. Even though you're running Linux, you're still running Microsoft's keys and DBs and DBX entries because it's controlled by Microsoft.
I'm stuck on the option ROM a little bit. Can there be only one or can there be multiple?
Oh, no, there can be multiple. Yeah.
And the only thing that makes it legitimate is it's signed.
Correct.
Is there Highlander rules or no? There can be
Well,
only one.
Yep, there is more than one.
Okay.
There was actually a Black Hat talk about 2 years ago that talked about ways to bypass the option ROM checking, or if someone were somehow able to get a hold of keys or sign a driver, sign an option ROM, you can get code execution.
And do you allow self-signed?
No. Well, if you added your own, you can add your own certificates into any of these stores, right? And there's also a mock util, a machine owner key, so you can add your own keys to add software that you sign with your own certificates.
Okay. And if you were a bad guy that had physical access to a device that could add a ROM that was perhaps optimized, customized for nefarious purposes, aren't there a whole lot of other things you would also want to do?
Yeah.
Where would this fall in the pecking order?
Yeah, this is
and I also want to add a ROM. This
is not like very well documented or public knowledge. It doesn't get talked about a lot, but the way that gamers bypass the anti-cheat is they buy a card from someone who's customized, I believe, if it works. It's similar to this way, if anything. They buy a card from someone, they put the card in their system, it loads an option ROM and can bypass the anti-cheat because it's getting in pre-OS to the system.
Yeah. That makes it sound like the option ROM is logical then at that point.
Yeah.
Okay.
In bypass, I mean, someone maybe got a stolen cert or was able to sign software or find some kind of bypass. Again, there was a Black Hat talk 2 years ago that talked about
probably
that,
a good reason to run checks for these things.
Yeah. Yes.
Besides the fact that you can just, put malware on them and it's pre-OS for God's sakes,
right. Yeah. So this is what organizations are struggling with now. Why I built it in the script. Again, if you're a Linux user, you want to check this stuff too. It does a lot of other stuff in this script. It gives you your BIOS information. Again, I know I need to put a BIOS update on my system. I haven't got around to it in a couple of years. But they did actually release an update for my motherboard, and I have to apply that. So that's a good reminder that I need to do that. However, this is manual work. When you see this, you have to go then find that you have an update, right? But at least it tells you what version you're running and the model number so that you can go to the manufacturer's website and go, oh, I need to apply a BIOS update. It gives you lots of information.
Is it really manual though? Can't you ask Claude or somebody else?
You could use Claude
AI to do
it. Yeah. You could give Claude this information, say, hey, go find my BIOS update. And that works too. So it gives you information about your CPU as well, a couple of different ways that it does that. I also incorporated Inksy, which is a great utility for understanding what hardware and drivers are on your system. Inksy gives you pages and pages of information. I think I just do a simple one here. It also Inksy can spit out vulnerabilities that are on your CPU. So known microcode vulnerabilities are actually tracked in the Linux kernel, like in /proc. There's a place to query for it, and Inksy does that for you as a utility. So it gives you like a little vulnerability output, which is kind of wild. There's also utilities to enumerate your TPM. Whether or not you have a TPM is an important question people want to know. Also, tell me something about my TPM. And it's weird. It says that it's not found. Maybe this is I haven't installed it on. It has a couple of different ways to get this information.
That's software. You haven't installed the software. That's all.
Yeah, I think I did it on another. I had like 3 systems I tested this on. So,
updates available. Come on.
Yeah, the other system gave me more verbose output for FW upd. So I'm running FW upd on the system. I'll have to run on another system because I don't have chipsec on this one, but I put it on another system. There's also ways to check the package validity, and I haven't fully unpacked what it's checking and what I need to check it against. When package integrity fails, so you run this command in Arch Linux that checksums all of your packages and tells you if there's a mismatch. And I haven't quite figured out why there's mismatches yet. Something I have to come back to. It gives you a full hardware summary of all the hardware on your system, memory modules, PCI devices, which is handy.
So you wrote this tool with cool output. You kind of need to act on the output at some point.
Yeah. Yes, okay. I do. I know.
All right.
Your storage devices, and then we can also run it remotely. See if I can enter my password right the first time. Nope.
"17 times later."
Yes, it ran. Okay, so this is a different system. This one does have secure boot enabled. And you can see that I'm running the older certificates on this system. I have not updated my certificates yet. This is a Linux system, an Ubuntu system with secure boot enabled. And it says, hey, you haven't migrated. Like, you got secure boot enabled and you haven't migrated your certificates. You should probably
From
do that.
From 2011?
Yeah.
Come on, man. You should
No.
The
other one, the certificate expires. The 2011 certificate expires. So the certificate was created in 2011 with the 6 year or whatever, 5 year expiration, and that's coming up. It's not like I have
about 15 year.
Sorry, 15 years. Yes.
Okay.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the cert expires basically.
Okay. So it's still good.
I think that's a bug because I definitely installed TPM checker on the system. That might be a bug that it's reporting not found when it's still there, because I think it gets this information from the TPM checker utility.
Well,
but you can see in this one, FWUpd gives you a lot of
I want to troubleshoot the code now and figure out the bug.
I know, right? Well, I would just ask Claude, hey, can you go fix that bug? And then just fix it.
You could ask Josh and Jeff. It's slower and not as fun. But.
So this is one of my framework laptops. It's got the inside BIOS, and it's fully supported by FWUpd. So it tells me that my fingerprint sensor needs a firmware update, which I haven't been applying. It should also tell me that my DBX is out of date too, in FWUpd. I'm not sure why it's not doing that, but maybe there was a different system where my DBX was out of date. But also FWUpd has another, what they call host security attributes. So it checks for certain security measures that should be in place on things like UEFI and your CSME or Intel ME, your TPM. So it's kind of a nice little check that things are there. I won't go through all the options, but and you can see on this system, I did install the Intel CSME version detection tool. And I believe it tells me it's vulnerable on this system. No, it tells me it didn't find it. But it did list my ME firmware, which is interesting. I did not input chipsec on this system.
Okay. You didn't see it? Deb's on.
Hey, I see PCI.
Yeah. Different PCI. There's one more. I got one more.
Oh, we got PCI into a text segment. That's all.
Oh, Jesus Christ. Yes, Jeff.
Yeah. So this one you can see on this other one, I did install chipsec. And so it uses chipsec to check if Intel ME manufacturing mode is enabled and BIOS write protections are enabled. So that's kind of neat when you do that.
And this one, meltdown.
Yeah, and this one it does have the Intel CSME version detection tool, and it does tell me that I haven't updated it and that it's vulnerable.
You named your computer Mjolnir?
Awesome. Yes, it's one of my computers.
Bravo, sir. Well done.
Yes.
You know that means you can throw it at somebody.
This one failed. Oh, even FWUpd told me I'm running an outdated CSME or Intel ME version, which is awesome. And for some reason, they didn't enable boot guard on the system. There's actually nothing I can do about that. Boot guard's not enabled. Which system is this? That's interesting. This is an Intel system. Oh, but you can also see on this system, it told me my DBX configuration is out of date. So I'm running an outdated DBX like I talked about before. And I wonder, this should tell me. Oh, so because this doesn't tell me if my DBX is out of date, this just tells me if I have entries in my DB that are going to expire, certificates in my DB that are going to expire. And
right,
if
so
I have
it tells you if it's going to expire, not if it's out of date. Got it.
But it doesn't tell me if the DBX as a whole is not either coming from Microsoft or from the UEFI Foundation. But the FWUpd tells me that it's like, hey, you've got an outdated DBX version. So this script is pretty comprehensive, provided you install the tools in the back end. This tells you a lot of information. Specifically, in what I was looking for is a lot of people are going to have this question of, do I have the latest certificates from Microsoft or not? And is my DBX up to date?
Is there any kind of summary, do this first type of output? Or
no, I don't have a recommendations. Yeah, it would be neat to build in an analyzer, Jeff, and produce a summary report at the end. That's a great feature request. I love that.
You're welcome.
I love that. It'd be also interesting to build in like a firmware downloader. That's a lot more work, though.
That's a lot more
work. Hey,
like
I've got this Samsung, can I update the firmware on it? Let me go check. FWUpd should tell you a lot. I mean, there's a whole project dedicated to that. Let's see, because
there's a lot here, and you know what you're looking at, but I don't think that you presume to know everything that you're looking at here. So
there should be like a little summary report. Yeah, agreed. But these are the things that, provided they're participating, like if Samsung's participating in FWUpD noticed that I had these Samsung SSDs, and if Samsung had partnered with FWUpD and told me there was a firmware update for them, FWUpD would report on them. So that's pretty cool. Yeah.
Good stuff, man.
In
all seriousness, what you've done is made it very simple and commodified to keep everything moving and not in a bad place. And that's awesome.
Well, yeah, because I would have questions. When are you going to AI enable it? I would have questions, and I'm like, wait, what is that command? And then I'd start putting that command in like a script. And then I'm like, why don't I just have like a master script that I can run all these commands from so they don't have to remember them? Because I just have questions like, what certificates are installed in UEFI?
So when are you going to put in the AI enablement so that if I don't know where I need to download that firmware from, I can just have the AI find it for me?
Dude, that'd be awesome. That'd be pretty easy to put in there. It'd be pretty easy. You give me your Claude API key, and I can run a little LLM query that basically searches the web and tries to find the update.
Because you've got this built out to do remote management of other computers. Right. What if I had 50 computers? I could remote manage 50 Linux boxes by doing this and then having the AI just find, okay, I've got 50 different Linux boxes because I'm a cheap bastard. I got them from auctions and whatever else.
Here's the thing. If, let's say we wanted to just automatically update the certificates and or the DB or DBX, that could potentially lead to a system that doesn't boot. So that code has to be researched, developed, and tested very well. Otherwise, you end up with a fleet of servers that aren't booting because, oops, you added your bootloader, current bootloader, to the DBX. So Secure Boot refuses to boot your system because your bootloader is in the revocation list, which has happened. Oh, dear. It's common. Check the Ubuntu forums. I've seen people posting about that all the time. I'm like, but FWUpD has a check for that.
Okay, so there are ways to do it.
You can use FWUpD to apply a DBX update on your Linux system, and it has those checks built in. Like it'll give you a huge warning. It's like if you add this, you're probably not going to be able to boot your system up, which is awesome. So we're slightly over time. You can find there's a link in the show notes to my GitHub, so you can find this script and you can go run it on your systems. We're going to take a short break and come back with the security news. Zero Trust is clearly the future as threats get faster, quieter, and harder to detect. But implementing it shouldn't disrupt the business. ThreatLocker enforces default deny at execution in a way that remains enterprise-ready, scalable, and operationally clean. Unknown software is stopped cold, trusted apps stay contained, and drift is locked down across the environment. It's Zero Trust that works in real enterprises and prepares you for the threats ahead. See why CISOs are adopting it at securityweekly.com/ThreatLocker. And we're back with the security news and some additional hosts. Miss Mandy Logan is here with us. Mandy, welcome.
Why, thank you. It's so good to be here. I missed y'all.
Mr. Lee Neely is here with us. Lee, welcome.
Hey, it's good to be back and at home and having fun here with you guys.
Outstanding. We got some great stories to talk about. I want to start with, let's just start at the top. The CVE chase must stop. The first part of this article is a whole bunch of stuff that we've already talked about on the show, like a lot, how, AI is taking over the world, discovering vulnerabilities faster than ever. But what are defenders doing to keep up?
Not a whole lot, apparently.
Yeah, I thought this was good for discussion. Is the article says that organizations must recognize that an attacker's true success is not initial access, but access to critical assets. Defense should focus on preventing that. This means identifying weak configurations that allow access to sensitive resources and enforcing proper network segmentation to prevent lateral movement, even if one endpoint is compromised. Well, that's the trick, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. I want to point out that this is curmudgeon territory. Because every single thing they're talking about in here, which is dual control, they call it 4 eyes, which is a bit weird considering I have 4 eyes, according to my childhood bullies. But
so they really mean 8 eyes.
So 2 autistics in a room. Got it.
Wait, I literally have monocular double vision plus double vision, so that makes what, like 12, 14, 18?
There's 5 of us wearing glasses. We've got 20 eyes.
Right?
Don't make me take my shoes off to count.
Well, they packed a lot in here. They also say permissions should be minimized and aligned strictly with user identities and actual needs. But what I think they failed to talk about was a good security policy and security process documents that help define
While you were out, Paul, we kind of emphasized.
I know, I heard that. I listen when I'm not here.
Security
I do listen.
fundamentals.
Yeah, and I thought it was a great comment, Jeff. And I think your story went back to Marcus Random. And I remember him talking about that even when he gave presentations well after you sat in training classes with him for firewalls, right?
Oh, yeah. That was 30 years ago. But
yeah,
he was right then.
How do you strictly align user identities with actual needs in a strict manner if you don't have good security policy and process documentation to help you formulate that? Like,
which
there needs to be a policy
document.
Is there a policy document like people in this role should have this level of access? If they need more, there needs to be this process and it's documented in this way.
And there needs to be a new section in that document, Paul, titled AI workers.
Yeah.
Or AI,
what should your AI have access to?
AI identities or whatever it's rightly called. But
No, and I think that's lacking in a lot of, that's a great call out, Lee. It's lacking when I create an agent with an MCP to interface with some system. What security policy is defining, one, whether or not that's allowed, and for who and for which systems and what level of access, right? That's where we're behind one area.
Well, look, if you do proper identity management, entitlement review, zero trust, data classification, and role-based access control, along with least privilege, you get everything they're talking about.
But also, Josh,
I think that's overkill.
What you just said, what you just said is very comprehensive. But if we treat AI and AI agents as identities, then it all falls in line with what Josh just said.
Yeah.
So, but isn't that? I thought. Okay, let's
go ahead.
Scoot back a little bit, because I thought overall, especially the last 3 years, at least, that AI bots, agentic AI, they were being treated as identities.
Yes and no.
Well,
a lot of people were treating them as the AI carries my credentials to answer questions that I ask. However, what an AI can do is say, hey, the AI has its own credentials and its own access, which should include anything that needs to answer the question that I ask it. But that even then, it can get just-in-time access, privileged access management stuff. To get access, it can be approved for access to anything I have access to, and then drop back down to its own access after it answers my prompt. There's lots of ways to
interesting.
do it.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Because
I give an AI agent access to a service, and it has my level of access. So I granted it API access, token-based access to Jira, right, to help me out.
You delegate
this week. And it's delegated, so it's acting on my behalf. So as long as the policies that govern my access to Jira are correct, then the fact that I have an AI agent kind of acting on my behalf, it's constrained by my user role.
Right. But there's two things. One is your role appropriately over or under permission for what the AI agent needs to do?
Correct.
Which comes back to Josh's point.
Yeah, I think it's you need more of a magnifying glass now on user roles, because AI agent. I did the same thing with GitLab, and I was like, I need you to do this, and then I ran into permissions issues, and I'm like, well, I need this level of access now. And but it's an AI agent sometimes acting on my behalf, so my permissions better be locked down to only what I need.
Is there such a thing as IBAC, identity-based access control? And do we need to go there? And the reason I'm asking the question is, does the AI account I'm putting it in PCI language. I apologize. Do we consider that a user account, a system or service account, or an application account? And which way should we treat it?
The trick is it's effectively a service account unless you do like Paul did, where he delegates his credentials to.
But I was reading, but as Paul did, I was reading something, looking at news stories the last couple of weeks.
The reason I did a call out is because I think that not enough people are thinking about it explicitly. I mean, Josh got the big picture right, that privileges need to be managed, identities need to be managed, everything has to be, least
But
privilege.
a lot of people are feeding their credentials into the AI and letting it
may
run
or may
as
not
them.
be okay without some
intuitively, I
analysis.
think it's not okay. I'll throw that
I'm
out
with
there.
you. It's just like, we used to do. I mean,
We're
when's
not
the last
supposed to
time you
share
worked on an app
credentials
that
with
did
anybody,
pass-through
and I think that should include AI. It should have
But I
its
don't
own
think it's
set of
that. I don't
credentials.
think AI necessarily in the context of what we're talking about, it doesn't really change it, right? Because
No.
I mean, the next thing says multi-factor authentication. So what's interesting, as I requested more permissions in
I don't
various
think
services,
the AI has a smartphone, so how is it doing the
No.
MFA?
but there's that. But also, that's a good question. I don't know how it works. It's a different. Your tokened or API access is different from your user access. But as I increased permissions on things, all of a sudden it was like, you need to have MFA enabled on your account now before these permissions are granted. I was like, well, that's good. I like this
smart.
this approach, right?
I started drinking too early in the tech segment, but can an AI have something as one of its authentication factors?
Well, I was
Does it
thinking,
know anything?
what about
Yes.
your
Yes, it does.
passkeys that aren't necessarily mobile specific? I mean, you might have passkeys on your computer, and your AI is using passkeys.
So non-human identities typically can't use passkeys easily, but
Well, that would
they
be
can.
nice, but I didn't trust that they couldn't.
Yeah, they can, but it's not easy. And as for things they know, they absolutely can store things. I have an AI with a key store. So it holds things in the key store for.
So that's
such as
something you
passwords.
have. That's not something you know.
No, it's a brain. It's a memory to them. It's a key store is a memory location to them. That's something they know.
Do they know anything?
Do you know anything?
They know what we've told it, Jeff, and they know what they've been trained.
Jeff, it is way too in the drinking evening to ask that question.
Jesus Christmas, man.
Sorry.
Wait,
But
so
also,
you're asking-
what Jeff
Hold on.
said.
I think
wouldn't
Mandy had a comment. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Mandy.
something that Jeff had said, wouldn't it go back to that the bot or agent has to trace back to a human so there can be accountability?
No, no, that's what agentic is all about.
Right. Delegation.
Now let's take an extension of that just for a minute, Mandy, because I love your question. Let's imagine that Jeff creates an agentic AI, and I'm using Jeff just because it amuses the hell out of me because he refuses to use AI.
Refuse to use AI. Yeah.
But let's imagine that Jeff creates an agentic AI agent to do 5 or 10 different tasks that he knows how to do. He's the best at doing it, but he's like, I'm bored. They're crappy tasks. I just want something to do it for me. So it's doing these tasks reliably, perfectly. He's really trained it very well because Jeff is a detail guy. He trains everything properly. Okay. And he's got these things working beautifully. And then he's like, you know what? Screw it. I'm done. I'm retiring.
Disciplined. You forgot disciplined, Josh.
Well, that's for your wife to know about. Anyway, so he retires. And now we've got this AI agent that does these 5 or 10 routine tasks. Is anybody responsible for that AI agent? That was a question, Mandy.
Understood. And at some point, if it's still operating within the organization's system, then somebody has to be able to take accountability. Like even have an autonomous vehicle or something, somebody has to take accountability somewhere, some way.
In San Francisco, I took a Waymo. Okay, this is a driverless car. There's nobody sitting in the driver's seat, and it's really cool to take. By the way, they're cheaper than Uber, and you don't tip a Waymo. And I took a Waymo, and I asked somebody, I'm like, hey, what happens when the Waymos get screw up or get caught in something that they're not quite sure what to do with? There's a band of drivers in the Philippines that take over for the Waymo and remotely drive it out of the problem, right? And the homeless people in San Fran have actually learned to take advantage of this. They'll sit in front and back of a Waymo so it can't move while there's passengers in it and say, hey, give us $20, we'll get out of the way and you can get to your destination. And people do it. So, but the point is that if there's a problem like a traffic jam or an accident or whatever, and the Philippine driver takes over and does something, crosses the double yellow line or whatever to get around the accident, and a cop pulls them over and writes up a ticket, who's responsible for the ticket? The driver in the Philippines, which doesn't even count. They don't have an American driver's license. The owner of the
So you're going to tell me that somebody who is remote operating a drone that kills people doesn't have some moral responsibility for what they did?
I'm not talking about killing people. Let's be clear. I'm talking
I'm
about
talking about crossing
a traffic violation.
They could kill somebody. It could stack a pedestrian.
It's going to happen eventually.
Right.
It will. Absolutely agreed. But I mean, is the Waymo driver in the Philippines? What if the Waymo's in autonomous mode? What if the driver says the Waymo was in autonomous mode? I was just observing. The amount of ethical and moral questions transcends a trolley problem by, I think, orders of magnitude.
Well, absolutely.
Why the Philippines? I've driven in the Philippines. I'm not sure I want those drivers operating the Waymo, but that's neither here nor there.
I want to go back to the article because Jeff, I put something in there just for you. So we're talking about defenses keeping up with the CVE chase. It says, finally, this entire framework must be continuously tested through penetration testing, ideally on an ongoing basis, which is now feasible thanks to AI. Agree? Disagree? There's a couple things to agree or disagree with there. The first is, do we agree that your entire framework of, we talked about basically role-based access control, RBACs, right? Was the gist of that led us to, when you implement an RBAC, the entire framework must be continuously tested through penetration testing. I think a good penetration test should test your role-based access control and MFA and identities, right? It's part of what it's testing. I get a hold of a service account that doesn't have the right restrictions, permissions, or monitoring, and that lets me compromise Active Directory. That's something a pen test can uncover.
Let me flip the question back on you, Paul, because I still have a problem with the fact that penetration testing and red team are considered two different things these days. When we were doing it 30 years ago, it was all kind of the same thing. But so I question, what is the purpose, what is the goal of a penetration test to begin with? I guess my question back to you, based on this quote from the article, is what is, well, it's a question / concern. What is the purpose? What is the role of the penetration test in your organization? For all the stuff that we've been talking about in terms of the security fundamentals over the last couple of weeks, my concern is always going to be thinking that automation in some form, in this case, we can have continuous pen testing, is going to take the place, substitute. We don't need to do the fundamentals because we've got this brand new shiny thing. Granted, it's got a lot more power, perhaps. It's got the potential for doing a lot more, going a lot deeper, finding a whole lot more things. But it's always not going to sit well with me that the temptation is there to not do the fundamentals, the things that go beyond the technology aspects of things.
Well, whether it's a person or AI, you still have to act on the results. You might use AI to act on the results. However, to me, that's going to take a lot more time. So here's the difference between using AI for offense and AI for defense. In AI for offense, I can have it try a whole bunch of stuff. It might crash things. It might break things, but that's a recoverable event. Reboot the system, bring the service back up, whatever the case may be. Restore from backups, right? But when you're using it for defense, now I have the potential to basically cut off the branch I'm standing on. And if it's not well tested, I can cause mass problems at scale. Go back to my technical segment, right? Manually, I was talking about, what if you were to use an automated process to update the certificates required for secure boot? That could have an operational impact that your systems don't boot, that you broke secure boot and it refuses to boot the system. Now that's a recoverable event. However, I start rolling that out to tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of workstations. Now, conceivably, I'd do that in batches, not all at once, but still using it for defense, I think, is a little more risky, right? To me, it requires a little more research and testing than using it for offense, where I can fuzz and have a lot more liberties as to what I'm testing.
But this isn't necessarily a new phenomenon.
No,
the use of AI is. But remember, when we started getting things like auto blocking rules for our perimeter protection, we didn't just block all the things automatically. We worked with it to see what it wanted to do, and then when we trusted it, we let it be more automated. Right. It's the same thing again. The time cycle on AI feels a lot faster, and the urgency to deliver it the day before yesterday instead of only yesterday is different. But I think the fundamentals are the same. You've still got to work up, learn what it does, learn how to tune it, make a few mistakes, hopefully not in production. Right? Yes, we've all made mistakes in production. I know that. But we try not to. We know better.
But if I've got an automated
because
AI
we're human. Now, AI is not going to make the mistakes, right?
Oh, no, I think it can make them at scale. I think it's only as good as what it's told to do, and part of it we didn't do the telling.
And
AI makes mistakes.
We did do the telling.
Ironically, I have a whole article that I added on this. It was my article. Someone
Is
else
it your story
it.
number 3?
Yes.
Yeah, I was going to say early on that this article
same topic,
very closely into your
so this article
3.
says, for our audience, and I was kind of digging this observation, right? We're talking about how AI adoption in defense and enterprise, like we're lagging behind. And this summarized it, I thought, really well. This is why many enterprise AI initiatives stall after the pilot phase. The problem's not the model. It's not prompt engineering. It's not AI governance. The problem is we have a fragmented enterprise stack beyond the AI layer. We have disconnected platforms, SaaS sprawl, legacy systems, workflow silos, duplicate operational tooling, inconsistent data architectures, weak observability, no orchestration layer, and no enterprise AI operating model. Wow, there's a lot to unpack there.
I would submit to you, Paul, that you could make the same statement and say that most enterprise security initiatives stall for exactly the same reasons. 100%. And it all goes back to there's this belief and desire and hope and dream that technology can automate all of this so that we don't have to think about it. And I mean, we were day job. There was a question that came up on whether AI pen tests can be accepted as a PCI pen test, and so there was a lot of back and forth on that. It goes, so I'm going back to the penetration testing thing, and just briefly, when and what and why did we as a community come to believe that the pen test is the ultimate live fire test, and what is implied in that when we have that belief? And does AI do it better and faster? Maybe, but better and faster finding problems again is meaningless if you're not fixing the problems, and if you're not fixing the systemic endemic institutional problems, which I believe can only be solved by the non-technical fundamentals.
Sure.
And to reiterate from last week, we actually tried to define security fundamentals, and I put out there, I think the security fundamentals are the things you think about before you go to the technology. What are our goals? What are we going to try to accomplish? What are these things that we put down on paper before we go and implement it with all the different types of automation and technology and the mother of all holy grails, AI.
So I keep coming back to a model that I talked about in a webinar that was ironically around AI and using that for security research. And it's a similar concept in fuzzing, but I also think it applies to pen testing and defensive security controls. And that's input, output, and outcomes, right? And those things have to be defined, right? And in your defender scenario, like the input is someone's going to launch an attack. Like, what's the output? Is it success? Is it failure? Like, whatever that is it data that comes back or not? And then, like, what's the outcome? And the outcome is my security control effective or not? right? You can kind of apply this model to not just fuzzing, but not just pen testing, not just AI, but also defense as well. And you have to define these three things, like your desired outcome. Okay, well, what's the output that we can measure that against, and what's the input that triggers that specific output? And I think that's how we need to be able to think about that in the context of our defensive posture. And a pen test should test that, but you're right, Jeff. You have to define that stuff before you can test it, right? Well, otherwise, you're just doing what we did way back, back in the day. Probably still happens now. Well, running a vulnerability scan, going, there's a bunch of vulnerabilities, you need to fix them, and that's not moving the security needle at all.
So two thoughts, and then I'll yield the floor. It reminds me of when I first started working at Tenable, where you and I both worked, and I was going to the weekly marketing meeting because we were both part of the marketing team, and they were reporting on the latest campaign where I don't even remember what they had done, and they were reporting that they had gotten, I'm making up a number, 7 leads.
Yeah.
And I asked the question, is that good or bad? You did all this stuff and you got 7. And I asked, is 7 a good number, or is it a bad number, or is it a mediocre number? And nobody could answer that question. Like, oh, we never thought about it because they were just reporting the results.
7.
Yeah,
and it could be a 6.
It might have been a 4. I'm just making up the numbers.
In that context, though, did 0 of them convert, or did all 7 convert, or what percentage converted into an actual sale?
And
what I'm getting at, though, my second point is in what you were describing is, dare I say, an equation you're not taking into, but you need to take into account the cost of all the different things that you do or don't do. And that has to be part of this determination of whether you're winning or losing, doing well enough, good enough, doing the right things. What do we do first? What are we not going to do? There has to be threaded into that the cost of everything as well.
Yeah, and that's a problem we still have today in security,
and we'll always have.
And AI is just a tool, right? I mean, it works its way into a lot of our conversations, but it's really just a tool. At the end of the day, I still need to know
how much does it cost.
But I still need to know how effective is my security control. Did it detect something, or did it not? And how do I measure that? Right. Regardless of AI, automation, and all the things we're talking about, what we're trying to measure is the effectiveness. But also, Jeff, you bring a great point. What's the cost of that? Right? Cost is part of the equation, and all of these are difficult to measure. I spent X amount of dollars implementing the security control. How many attacks did that stop? How many did it let through? Like, am I getting a return on investment from this? There's been a lot of research in our field about this.
So there's one, I want to extend that a minute, Paul, but I want to give you some context. Monday night, we're having dinner at Trattoria in Disney California Adventure. We wound up sitting next to this young couple from New York, first time in Disneyland. Turns out he's a data privacy guy working for E&Y.
Okay.
Right? And
at that point, you should have moved to another table. But
no, he was fine.
Wow, shots fired.
I'm retired. What the hell? But what we both realized is that one of the problems we have, and we're seeing it emphasized with AI just because of the speed, is that people aren't always asking the questions, developing the right. It's not, is the control effective, Paul? It's, are we doing the right controls? Have we got all the protections we need on our data and information? I mean, yeah, I'm not trying to pull a PCI card with Jeff, but yeah, he's got a list. But is it the right list? And if Paul doesn't ask what he should be protecting, he creates some great controls. Those controls may be fabulous, but he might not be protecting the data the way it needs to be.
No, and that's a great aspect to it. I mean, that's just why our field is so complex. That you bring a great point in that.
But yes,
I can have the best control possible with the best outcomes. It didn't cost me a lot, but it's not protecting my most critical assets or data or people, and therefore I'm spending. Why am I spending?
But does
the
it
money
make you feel better, Paul?
But it makes us feel better, man. When I have something that's knocking it out of the park, it's stopping every single attack. It's expected outcomes. It doesn't cost me a lot. However, it's not protecting the most sensitive data. It's not protecting the most critical systems. I still feel good about it because if I can measure those outcomes, I feel good about it. But it's a great aspect to this matrix of security.
But I would wager that the most critical systems and the most critical data aren't being protected because the perceived cost of doing the things is perceived to be too expensive based on the likelihood that something bad ever happens.
Well,
not that the value
but that
of the
cost
data
could be
itself,
the cost could be usability too, right? It could be
well, don't get me started.
You still
talk
need to
about
know.
BitLocker. Did you guys talk about BitLocker last week?
Oh, we
did.
did 4 times, dude. Like 4 or 5 times. It's crazy.
Did you cover the fact that a couple of updates there? A BIOS password does not mitigate the attack. Did you cover that angle?
You would have better insight.
We not
into
only
this.
covered that attack, but
Please.
the one thing we didn't cover was that the researcher has now gotten thrown off of GitHub.
GitHub. So Microsoft kicked them off GitHub. So they're in. So we wrote an article at Eclipsium. I mean, my name is on it, but my coworkers John Lucchese and Stas helped me with the article, and their names are called out in there as well. It's my story number 12.
So if there's anything wrong, it's their fault.
No,
they
helped make sure everything was right because there was so much to unpack with that. The fact that the attacker is not booting from a USB key, the attack just kind of lives on a USB key, that they're forcing a Windows recovery mode. Some of the real fixes are to either disable Windows recovery mode. I don't know if you talked about this. And or neuter Windows recovery so it's not vulnerable per Microsoft recommendations. And so, but the other thing is there's 2 different types of controls via passwords in your BIOS. One is your BIOS, and everyone calls it something different, and that's why it gets confusing. We link in this article to the NSA document that offers guidance on these different credentials. So one is basically a password that you need to enter in order to enter into your BIOS. We typically call it your BIOS password, right? So that prevents an attacker from changing things like disabling secure boot or changing the boot order in your BIOS. The other one is a boot password, which means your system will not boot until you enter a password. Operationally, the NSA guide actually says you shouldn't do that because operationally, it's too hard. Every user would need a password in order to unlock and boot their system. Is it a good protection? Absolutely. It's a very effective security control. Operationally, is it feasible to roll out because of usability and maintenance? Absolutely not. But the point was that the BIOS password doesn't protect the attack. They call it different things. They call it a storage password or a boot password. But it's still not recommended that you do that because of the operational aspect. Josh, you bring up the other interesting point about this article that the author had published the exploit code for this BitLocker YellowKey attack on GitHub. Microsoft suspended this person's account. That person went to GitLab. GitLab suspended their account. So if you haven't cloned the repo,
do it soon.
You don't have the code, and I don't know where. So our article actually has a 404. And it's being updated to say Microsoft has revoked this person's access.
The best security is to bury the truth.
And it's interesting. I gave love to my coworkers today because they have trained me when we find something interesting. Because a lot of times in my feeds, right, reading and researching the threat landscape, I'm like, hey, check out this really cool attack. There's a GitHub repository for it. And my coworkers always tell me, do we need to clone that? Like, make sure you clone that and save it because there's always a possibility that it could go away. And look what happened here, right?
Well, that's been kind of the mantra since the dawn of the internet.
Yes. It's a very important thing, especially as a security researcher. If anyone working in security, you find something cool, save a copy of that because you never know when a cease and desist will come out or someone's going to yank anyone's account.
I want to ask you about the last mitigation, Paul.
Yeah.
The tamper indicators. I mean, familiar with them, used them in risky situations where you want to know if a machine's been tampered with, like the drive's been removed and everything. But I'm curious about the application to this vulnerability because I thought it was take the laptop as a unit, bypass the BitLocker security, and then I can go get data off it. I don't necessarily have to crack the case screws. Am I missing something?
That's correct. You can, if you can gain physical access to a system, and you can force it into Windows recovery mode, you can execute this attack. Right, provided the system, again, hasn't been hardened, hasn't had Windows recovery, WinRE, I'll call it WinRE from now on, WinRE disabled, or Microsoft's configuration guidance for WinRE that makes it not vulnerable. Right, that mitigates. That to me is the best defense against the YellowKey attack.
Yeah.
Is to either
that
now disabling WinRE has operational risk associated with it because it means your users can't go into Windows recovery mode, which could be a problem should that arise. Similarly, how a boot password could hinder that operation as well. So
I would argue the WinRE recovery is a greater impact for the home user with managing their own device as opposed to an enterprise device. Although it's less of a target, it's less likely. Well, I got to be careful.
And you're right.
To say less likely to have that data.
An enterprise might have other means to do that recovery, right?
Yeah. So, Paul, I mean, last week when you weren't here, we were talking about this, and we were kind of doing our best to try to understand it, the nature of the vulnerability, because you're more into this as your day job. Could you briefly describe what the nature of the problem was? Because we were kind of guessing a little bit as to how it worked in the first place, and the fact that you could bypass BitLocker and how, and could you just give us a brief recap?
Yeah, like a brief high level is Microsoft built, whether on purpose or accidentally, built a method in which you can change the configuration of Windows recovery such that when you make that configuration change, the BitLocker code runs and unlocks the drive that allows you to decrypt it. It also gives the user a facility to access that drive via a command window. And it only does that if you load a very specific configuration that's read by WinRE. WinRE goes, oh, you had this special configuration, therefore I'm going to stop here. Like after I unlock the drive, I'm going to stop here and then give you the opportunity to pop a command window. And guess what? You can read out the contents of the drive. That's why some, like my coworker Vlad, made a very compelling argument in another podcast that, like, why would Microsoft have this very specific configuration that gives the user access to the drive right after it unlocks it in a Windows recovery environment? Like, that doesn't seem like an accident because it's a very specific configuration. That's the FSTX
Clipper chip, escrow.
It's the FS
Big Brother
in the Windows environment.
I can't think of any
never
reason
seen this
right.
before.
They call it FSTX. There was a specific like NTFS configuration file that's read by WinRE, and when that happens, it leads to this situation.
So, BitLocker, does it really encrypt the drive, or is it really doing something to?
No, like it really encrypts the drive. Yeah, like the keys on the TPM, you got to get the key out of the TPM. Yeah.
And this attack was not. We got hung up on the term bypass because I was maintaining this is not technically a bypass.
Yeah, I mean, for lack of a better term, I think is why they're calling it a bypass, Jeff. But you're right. It's
but the
more
key
like
to decrypt is somewhere on the laptop, and this is a way to get at it and enable it or authorize it because of the recovery mode. Is what I'm hearing.
Okay. That's correct. And the killer is that
Microsoft
we claim that
must have
BitLocker
called it something. So Microsoft is actually one thing Microsoft's good about is when they publish a CVE, they fill out all the fields, which I love, which is great.
Except for now, the AI is probably filling it out. But.
Yeah, so somewhere in there, CWE 77. So I can tell you exactly how. So common weakness enumeration is the classification of attack. Improper neutralization of special elements used in a command or command injection. So that's what they called it.
Say that again.
CWE 77 is improper neutralization of special elements used in a command, air quotes, command injection.
Special elements, passwords, the tokens,
the
decryption keys.
FSTX configuration is they're referencing that as basically a command that tells it to.
So let me ask my bottom line question. Current day job company.
I don't know if I agree with that, but that's how they categorized it.
Current day job company. My laptop is protected with BitLocker, and I had said on air last week that I had gone through some sort of update because it was Wednesday. It was probably the Wednesday after Patch Tuesday, and I was pretty sure there was a BIOS update. Thursday, I'm getting another forced update, and I'm watching it, and there's a BIOS update. And when it came time where it was rebooting, where I would ordinarily put in my BitLocker password, it crapped out and said something wasn't available, and I had to hit a button to continue or reboot again, and then it just came up. So I never did actually have to put in the BitLocker password that time. Now, since then, every time I bring it up, I'm having to put in the BitLocker password, but I have not yet had to change it. And we were hypothesizing last week that part of the fix was going to be a manual. People are going to have to change their BitLocker password. True, false?
Yeah, no, because the attack only works in Windows recovery environment. Is the attack vector.
So I don't have to, and users don't have to change their BitLocker password necessarily.
No.
Okay.
No, as a matter of fact, in many places, users can't change their BitLocker password.
BitLocker password is right. Yeah, the PIN.
Yeah,
PIN password.
Yeah, the PIN. Yes, but I mean, the BitLocker is crazy token, and it's the fact is that they have a system where the token is left on the machine. That's unacceptable. We've been using BitLocker and FileVault for years, knowing that if you have physical access of a lost laptop, it's okay. I don't care. There's nothing you can do with it. Now you can. Unacceptable.
Oh, I want to go back to AI exploit development and detection, because my story number 5, also a theme has emerged, talked about this. Because I think we've
some of us also had stories too, by the way, Paul.
Sorry, I was just at the top reading from my story, but these all relate to each other. So do my number 5, then we can pivot to some of yours, Jeff. I promise. So we all know threat actors are using LLMs to accelerate development, exploit writing, finding vulnerabilities. We've driven that point home. This article says on the defensive side, the cat and mouse game has shifted too. Defenders are deploying AI-driven scanners to detect these AI-generated exploits in real time. I don't know if that's really true. If we've really gotten to that point is where I question that part. However, there was some other interesting things. We talked about our time at Tenable, Jeff, and there was a great quote in the article. So this article is based on, this is from Dark Reading, but it was a study conducted by some Cogent Research, analyzed 69,000 common vulnerabilities and exposures, and they did a whole report on it. I haven't read the whole report, but I pulled some quotes or stats from it. And they said in their research, they found that 54% of all CVEs published since January 2025 lacked detection signatures from any of these vendors. Among those scanners, response times also varied, with the median detection lag after disclosure measured 0.1 days for Tenable, 2.9 days for Qualys, and 5.1 days for Rapid7. So what they're saying is there are so many vulnerabilities being released, we're not developing signatures to detect them fast enough.
Kind of makes you wonder how much Tenable's embraced AI for signature development, or what do we call them? I have to say, plugins.
Though, even when we were at Tenable, Jeff, we had a great process for rapidly developing detections for new vulnerabilities. There was I don't give away I'm like secret sauce or whatever, but it's been a long time since I've worked at Tenable.
It's been 10 years. I think the statute of limitations
has passed. But, and I'm not saying anything like proprietary. There was a dedicated plugin writing team dedicated to new vulnerabilities coming out. And that team would rotate too, because you kind of got burnt out.
And
right?
we were there at a time where there were some pretty famous vulnerabilities being discovered.
100%.
And ones that had logos and whole marketing teams behind them.
Right. So the game was, how do you research and understand a vulnerability well enough to write a detection and just not be the first to put one out, but have a quality detection for that. And they did that really well. I got to be honest, I'm trying to replicate that process, and it's hard, right? It's hard, right. Especially the complexity that we see today with exploits being chained together and malware that's hiding in all different ways and affecting these platforms we don't have great visibility into. Like, it's even more of a challenge today. But it didn't surprise me that Tenable was leading the way, because they've always had a great process for that. And they must have kept it maintained to keep, January 2025 is fairly recently. They're still knocking it out of the park in terms of, being able to detect it first. Now, quality, I don't know. I can't speak to today. But if their commitment to quality was what it was 10 years ago, then they're doing a good job.
Although I can't help but think of some more security fundamentals here. Like,
oh my God, security fundamentals. We never talk about that.
Like, don't expose your management interface to anybody.
Yeah, there's that.
Don't and defense in depth. Make sure you've got things in front of you, things to block malfeasance where possible. I mean,
but this next one from this article, this is from the same article. So this quote says, and I think this is next to impossible or maybe impossible. The organizations in the best position right now are the ones that can answer, are we running affected software within minutes of a new CVE, independent of whether their scanner vendor has shipped a plugin for it?
Yeah, I got that beat.
That's a critical control.
I'll fight you on that all day long, because version detection is not sufficient to accurately detect a vulnerability.
Absolutely agreed.
And what you're relying on when you have an inventory of assets with software that you may think is at a certain version or know it's at a certain version, that version doesn't mean as much as you think it does, because the actual vulnerability could still be there. There's a lot of situations where the software actually vulnerable? You can't answer that question definitively just looking at the version number.
Right. Now, okay. So it's a start. Let's be clear. It's a decent start. Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah.
But here's the problem. You've got version 3.5 of software XYZ, right? Mm-hmm. You look at a chart and you go, look, there's potential vulnerabilities in that software. Number one, is that software something core to your business? Is it a minor thing? Is it no big deal? Is it reachable? If it's not reachable from the internet or from somebody, it doesn't matter.
Well, Josh, you got to back up a little bit. Do we have it, or are we running it?
That's valid. Okay. Is that actually a piece of software we use?
There's one more element, Josh. And I was going to say this a minute ago. Are you in a vulnerable configuration?
Right. Is it reachable? If I can't
have you turned this? Well, there's I was, when you said reachable, I was thinking, can an attacker attempt to exploit it? When you said reachable,
valid.
And I was thinking about,
and then this configuration of whether it's vulnerable
if it needs feature number 712 turned on, and we've never, and that's not enabled, it's a different fine. But these are not even just. It's not even just. Does it have this feature? Is this feature configured,
enabled,
in this
configured,
way?
Vulnerable? Yeah, exactly.
So it's two things. And do I have the vulnerable version?
Right.
But
the problem is
the specific configuration that makes that version vulnerable. And I can tell you, I'm not sure what VM is doing about this today, but I can tell you that correlating between is it vulnerable and is it configured vulnerable, therefore it is vulnerable, is a very hard problem to solve. You have to really analyze the configuration and the version and correlate those two things together to go, is this vulnerable?
But Paul, let me ask you a question, Paul, because I'm chafing at your statement. Your statement was just because the vulnerability or the version doesn't automatically mean you do or don't have the vulnerability. I don't disagree with that statement, but is it or is it not a security fundamental to have some sort of sense of an inventory of what you have in your environment, and is the best way, primary way, de facto way that most organizations have these inventories running a scanner.
Wait, say that
Because
again, Jeff. I'm
not
sorry.
necessarily a
you should know
vulnerability.
what you have before you run a scanner, but I see most organizations that I work with, they do whatever the scanner tells them. They have or do not have a problem based on what the scanner says. And they use the scanner for discovery and for inventory, which I think is not a fundamental. That's my
So
thought.
It's not a fundamental. It is a cop out, effectively.
Yes.
If you have an inventory, first off, if you have an inventory of your software, you're better off than at least 50% of the enterprises out there. Okay, number one. Number two, if you have an inventory of your software and you go and check and see which vulnerabilities are, I'm going to say, available for those pieces of software, you're doing better than 60% of the people out there. I will probably run out of numbers. I'm playing this by ear.
You're making them up anyway. Go ahead.
Yeah,
Keep going.
It's anecdotal, but trust me, it's worse than it sounds. Anyway, if you have an inventory of your software, if you check them against the VEX or the BOV, the Bill of Vulnerabilities, to find out which vulnerabilities those pieces of software have, you're doing better than a lot of people. Let's just say a lot of people. If you then go and figure out which versions, and to Lee's point, if you're configured in a vulnerable fashion, if it's reachable from the outside or from where your threat model is telling you it's a bad place, then you're doing amazing considering. But it's still not enough, and that's the problem. And that goes to the fact that, I'm sorry, go ahead.
But why do I do all that? Why can't I just run the scanner and let the scanner tell me what the problem is and just act accordingly?
Because the scanner, can possibly not reach into everything. Are you guaranteeing me that you've set up the scanner to reach 100% of your network? One. Are you telling me that the scanner is updated with everything that's out there? Two. Three, a scanner is no longer sufficient. And let me explain why. Do you mind if I swap articles?
Never was.
Well, I'm going to say it's not sufficient at this point. I'll leave the never was later. Paul, do you mind if I swap articles to mine?
Yeah, go for it.
So I have only one article on this week, and it's one that I actually...
We should talk about your only one article, so go for it, Jeff.
Yeah, details. So the nonprofit that I'm the president of, the Value Chain Risk Institute, turned out its first research report today, and it's horrible. Okay? Absolutely horrifyingly bad. We did a sample search. We took about 7 different ecosystems, I think it was, PyPy, Go, NPM, etc., and we checked them for various factors. And we looked for different things. And one of them was, how many packages are abandoned and still used? And there's way too many of those. And we looked for how many packages have malicious software in them or malicious pieces in them. And we looked for all different sorts of things. But the basic thing is that what we checked for was also how long did it take when somebody wrote a commit? This is, hey, there's 2 kinds of commits, effectively. There's either I'm adding a new feature, don't care, or I'm fixing a problem, an issue, a bug, right? Okay. So if somebody writes a bug fix commit, they haven't packaged it, they haven't gotten a CVE number, they haven't gotten a CVSS score, they haven't gotten an advisory written for their customers, they've just written the fix, bare source code. In years past, pre-AI, it was, and Paul, we talked about this earlier in the show, it was days to weeks before exploit code was available in the wild. Post AI, they're checking the diffs on every commit. And from the diff, they're writing exploit code. You have minutes. So a scanner is no longer sufficient because a scanner says, hey, what criticals do you have? What highs do you have? What mediums do you have? Now it's what code do you have?
But
because
even
I'm going to find... Go ahead.
Don't forget, code and binaries are different things. So your scanner can tell you, based on a binary, you've got this version, you got that version. But we all know that's loosey-goosey, right?
Yeah.
Especially in Linux world. Like you've got kernel version, blah, blah, blah. Well, there's like tens of millions of lines of code in the Linux kernel. And just because you slapped a version on it, does that mean I have the vulnerable code or not? So unless you check, you really don't know if you're vulnerable. It may tell you yeah, you have the Linux kernel. So any Linux kernel vulnerability you're potentially vulnerable to. Well, that's great. I'm still working with tens of millions of lines of code across tens of thousands of systems. Unless I'm actually doing what I believe a lot of VMs aren't. And if you are, please tell me because I want to know. But what AI told me was that the traditional VM market is not doing the binary analysis. So let's look at a couple of examples. One is the copy fail vulnerability. Am I vulnerable or not? Well, my kernel says I'm not vulnerable, or my kernel says I am vulnerable. But what if I look at the actual Linux kernel and see if it has been patched or not via binary analysis? Oh, well, I may get different results, right? That kernel version may be like, oh no, it's patched, but they produced updates to increment the Linux kernel version without taking the patch that actually fixes the copy fail vulnerability, which means you're still vulnerable. There's examples with this of network edge vendors, Arista and F5, where they say like this version, yeah, by version, like it's vulnerable. However, you're only truly vulnerable if you've got this feature enabled in this configuration. And by the way, if you've got that feature enabled, but you're in this configuration, you're not vulnerable. So now determining if you're vulnerable is a very complex study of what version you're on, what features are enabled, and how they're configured. In my estimation, modern like VM is not getting you there, right? You need some kind of deep binary analysis, deep configuration analysis to determine if you're vulnerable or not. Now, do you have to do this across every single vulnerability that you might be potentially vulnerable to in your entire organization? No.
Right.
To your guys' point, right? You got to figure out what's critical and focus on that. So even based on what's critical, you have to do that deep analysis to figure it out.
And the thing is, the analysis takes time. And by the time you've done this, the scanning has started across the internet to find that vulnerability, to find the something they can exploit. In other words,
it takes time to ask me how I know this from my day job. It takes time to accurately research, develop, and test checks that are doing this advanced analysis to make sure you don't have false positives, to make sure you don't have false negatives, let alone if you're pushing out a new configuration or software update. That needs even more testing because you could introduce some kind of operational risk.
Right. I mean, you can easily say to keep track of whether you have any, QNAP NAS or whether I have any, Palo Alto devices. But then do I have the ones in the low configuration becomes a lot harder. So you can prune some of the list fairly quickly, but it gets a lot harder.
Yes, to actually
more automation you want to say, oh crap, I got to go look at this.
Can I give you one more piece of wonderful, wonderful news?
Of course.
So the Open Source Security Foundation or Federation, I forget, I think it's Foundation, the OSSF, was tracking the security in the software supply chain over hundreds of thousands of packages, right? Doing very similar to study the one that we just did. We did it for only 62,000 packages. It's a preliminary study. Found out that the OSSF stopped doing it with they didn't tell anybody. They just stopped about 10 months ago. So, Google pulled their...
What the damn hell?
Google pulled the employees they were loaning to the OSSF and pulled them back to work on AI. And so we're going to pick it up. We've got their code. It's all open source. We're going to pick it up and we're going to start running that. So we're going to keep track of this. But it's crazy that it just stopped and nobody knew. So...
we didn't know.
Yeah. It's
Jeff,
absolute craziness.
You had some articles you wanted to hit.
Go ahead.
Well, I'm not necessarily in I don't care about any of my articles in particular, but we can cover some because I was about the only one that had any articles except for Josh's one article.
Well,
let's talk about how about the Canvas data breach? While we talk about that.
There's a long tail to that, right? We talked about this.
It is
story.
We've talked about it, and it's the gift that keeps on giving. I happened to post an article that talked about, what students and parents need to worry about when it comes to Canvas data breach. There's nothing earth-shatteringly new in terms of the recommendations, but for all the talk that we have about AI and AI doing offense and defense and this, that, and the other, there's still real companies out there that are being compromised for all the reasons of security fundamentals that we've discussed that have consequences. This one hits home because my grandchildren, at least my granddaughter in particular that's in high school, she came home one day and was like, what's going on? Because she uses this thing called Canvas, and she's a user, and they were impacted. So
does anyone know what the data security standard is that protects student data at
there
colleges
is none
in universities? No,
GLBA and FTC safeguards at most universities.
Nope.
But there
Mandy,
really is none
Lee,
for student data.
Jeff and Josh are both wrong. Mandy, Lee?
No,
you worked at a university, so you know
did.
the answer.
Me
I do.
too. And then I feel like I had this discussion at Zero Trust Pro. No, I had this discussion, but I can't remember anything. Right
Yeah,
now.
it's called FERPA, Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act. Governs
incorrect.
privacy and security of student education
So-
records. I was like, I think it's FERPA, and then I looked it up just to
FERPA,
double check,
right.
but it is FERPA.
Not to be confused with Sherpa.
FERPA
different.
only protects
No.
the data from the people trying to get it. It doesn't protect it as a data. It's not formally a data security standard.
Yeah, that
It
was
is
my next question for the AI, because I framed it as a data security standard, but I don't remember
FERPA
all the
is
specifics
basically
of
so
FERPA.
that an adult
You
student,
knew, you just couldn't remember what it was. You know the standard now. I jogged your memory.
It's not a data security standard. It's basically so parents can't get your adult kids' grades without asking the adult kid.
Yeah, requires universities to protect personally identifiable information in educational records and limits who can access or disclose those records to for what purpose. So it's more of a data privacy standard than a data security standard.
Which
So it's
One
like
of the
If I remember correctly.
it's more like HIPAA than a security.
which is an interesting observation, Paul, because
it does. Go ahead, John.
what's the difference? I was thinking about this when I was putting some of these stories together. What is the difference between data security and data privacy? And personal versus corporate. I mean, these are very esoteric, subjective terms, I think.
I think of it as data security is I'm going to do things that are dictated in a standard or that tells me what I need to do to protect it from falling into the wrong hands. The data privacy is I'm limited as to who I can share that with and how, like on purpose, right? Like go to your DMV, right? You fill out the
That is
form
100%
says, I don't want you to
correct.
share my data. That's a data privacy thing, right? But if the DMV is dictated, says like you need to have some controls so that data is not leaked or doesn't fall into the wrong hands. That's a data security standard, right? We talk about PCI, Jeff, right? PCI is a data security standard. It is things meant to protect your credit card information from falling into the wrong hands. It doesn't necessarily dictate where they can share information about my purchasing habits. That would be a data privacy thing.
Maybe. I mean, it depends on what the authoritative definition is. But you're touching on.
This is just Paul's opinion on what this means.
So much. Who do you think writes these definitions?
Well, it's not Paul.
It's not me.
No, it's
Maybe
me,
Josh.
and you.
It's not Claude.
No,
No,
Jeff.
but,
How much of PCI have you written, Jeff? Seriously,
How much have I written?
how much of PCI
Zero.
have you written? Bullshit. Come on, you've told me you've been on those PCI council meetings. How much of it is in your words, even if you didn't type them out?
I would not wager a guess because in the PCI world, I'm just a QSA. I'm just a peon. I'm just a pawn in the machine, a cog in the machine.
It's adorable. There are standards with my words in them. We write these
Jeff
standards.
is
This
only
us.
pawn in game of life.
Confucius say.
I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, Josh. But
He's the only known king pawn in the world. And then it's not a common thing. There's a king pawn. He's the only known in the world. Okay, back to the question about FERPA. So in Rhode Island, what additional laws or governances stack on that? And I have a reason I'm asking this. Goes back to something you were saying, but because of the conversation I was having on FERPA, and in California, I think it's called SOPIPA, or SOPIPA, I don't know how they say it, SOPIPA, where ed tech companies cannot build profiles or use data to market.
Oh.
So it moves it away from Meta being able to use the data as much on the students. Anyway, going with FERPA. Is there more that goes on top of that is commonly used for protecting data for students or no?
I think FERPA is protecting. So I was asking it, and it's jogging my memory now, right? So we had to do things that we had to protect the names, email addresses, student ID numbers, right? Mm-hmm. That was what was personally identifiable information. But it says passwords, dates of birth, government IDs based on that may not be covered, right? So it's I don't know. I'd have to really study FERPA and what was leaked in the Canvas breach to determine if that applies to this situation. I think it was maybe.
I think you were just trying to I used to work for a university and there was this thing called FERPA.
I heard of this thing called FERPA.
I'm just going to use it in a sentence.
Yeah, but it begs the question: what does it apply to the Canvas breach? Was where I was really trying to get at.
I have not. I mean, I've heard of it. I've never experienced it. So I don't know. My guess would be that it's probably, because it's a government standard, it probably is misunderstood, misapplied, and has largely gone by the wayside. I mean, when's the last time other than when you worked for the university, Paul, when was the last time you heard of FERPA?
Yeah, it doesn't come up now because I don't work for a university anymore.
Right.
So I've had it in training programs, but that's about it, where I had to teach people what FERPA was, but that was only at schools. FERPA's, that's it.
So I found an article that talked about FERPA, COPA, and SOPIPA.
COPA's under 13.
Copacabana?
The COPA is for the children
Child
under 13.
Online
Protection,
Privacy and Protection Act?
Children's Online Privacy Protection Act.
Right. Yeah. And it's basically saying that FERPA is about how the school shares data. COPA is about what they collect from under 13. And SOPIPA, how you pronounce it, let's call it Bob, prohibits the vendor from selling data or using it for advertising regardless of age. But that's the California law, and they imply there's others out there, and they're also talking about the National Data Privacy Agreement, which is still in development, so it doesn't apply to this breaches yet. It's like crazy. I would have expected something a little more concrete and broad sweeping.
I mean, we're talking standards here, Lee, so nothing's concrete.
We're talking standards, and we're talking privacy, not security. And what's the difference between those two things?
Well, do
we have enough time?
Valid point. I mean,
because FERPA it says it right in the acronym is a privacy act, and I'm not even sure it was FERPA that was the driving force behind. When I started at university in 2001, there was still, I don't think where I worked, we were using the social security number as a student ID. I think we might have just gotten away from that. And there were several other schools that were getting away from that as well. It was largely considered bad practice, but I don't think it was FERPA that was necessarily driving you cannot use social security number as your student ID.
Wasn't that around the same time that states quit using it or quit using it?
Yeah, I think so. There might have been some other regulations, Mandy. It might have been state regulations, right? Which is maybe why it was kind of sparse. Like we had gotten away from, maybe because of a Rhode Island legislation, we might have gotten away from it, but other states hadn't caught up. But it was like at that time, generally bad practice. Everyone was like, we got to get away from that. It might have just been awareness about your
That's what I'm
social
thinking
security
too.
number as being, PII.
Because it also was, I know by 2005, 2008, wasn't that when the Medicare numbers started switching over from being social security numbers to
Right.
being randomized
Yeah.
as
Well,
well? I'm thinking
No,
mine
I
just,
still think for like student loans and stuff, we had to collect social security number as part of that process. But largely it was frowned upon for like any other usage. You should not use.
So
SSL.
I'm looking at Jeff for help here, because I'm pretty sure, Jeff, when you and I were in college, they were still using the social security number. But I also think that the Privacy Act of 74 was when we had the first direction to federal agencies to stop using social security numbers. Does that sound right, Jeff?
It sounds vaguely right. I mean, the issue is the social security number is really, it was originally intended to be an authentication instrument, an identifier. It was intended to be a unique identifier for you. And somewhere along the line, it became exploitable, and therefore it became a PII issue.
Yeah.
And that's part of the problem. I mean, I think I forget what conference I was at where Dave Kennedy was on stage. It wasn't DerbyCon, I don't think, but he was on stage and he was like asking random people in the audience, "Tell me your name, and I'll show you what your social security number is." It's it's always been a problematic data point.
It was kind of like, here's your selective services, here's your social security card, and here's your selective services registration. You need it for that.
Right.
okay, I want to interject here real quick, since Jeff talks about being older than dirt, whatever, because hard to his age. I'm like, it must be hard having your social security number compromised all the time when it's 13.
Ouch.
I got walked out of a client one time because I was doing research on social security numbers. I had discovered a repository of social security numbers, and I was Googling, I was searching, doing a web search on, there are websites where you can type in a social security number. It's not a random number. It's, it's kind of like a credit card number. Different parts of it have different meanings, and part of it is geography located.
Yes. Where you were born.
And I was doing searches on that, and it was detected by the corporate security team, and they decided I was a bad guy, so I got walked out. Different story for a different day.
That's awesome. I never heard that story before, Jeff.
I will tell that story someday.
Good on them.
Yeah, we want the full story on next week. Yeah.
Not today.
Myself.
We're going to go to Jeff's story number 1 next week, right?
I should give a talk on that sometime, though.
I just quickly want to talk about the Flipper one. This got a lot of attention this past week.
You mentioned UEFI already in passing.
Now I got to check all the boxes. Would you flip? Well, this isn't a Flipper 0. This is a Flipper 1. It's a very, very different device.
What's the difference?
With a different purpose. So a Flipper 1 is, I'm still trying to unpack like what to call this. It's essentially a Linux computer and a Flipper 0 all in one device. So I love the goals and challenges. They're taking on a very ambitious project. So their goals were to build the most open and best documented ARM computer in the world with full mainline Linux kernel support, push vendors to open up existing closed source code and ditch binary blobs entirely, build an unconventional hardware platform based on a coprocessor architecture that pairs with a microcontroller or CPU, hence I've got an MCU, they're using a Raspberry Pi MCU, and they're using an ARM CPU. And these can be independent of each other. So you can just power up the MCU and have access to like Flipper 0 like functionality, or you can boot up or have both boot up your Linux computer on it as well. They also say they want to rethink how people use Linux and develop our own GUI framework with wrappers around existing CLI utilities. They're creating their own Linux distribution for this platform. Back in the day, we had the Nokia N900, N770, I believe were the model number handhelds that ran Linux. And we played around with those. We tried to use them for security research, and then ultimately they like ended up in a drawer somewhere. And we moved on to a laptop or other devices. So this hardware platform, I think, is one of the most ambitious projects that anyone's ever taken on in this realm. So it comes with 2 gigabit Ethernets, a 5 gigabits a second USB Ethernet, Wi-Fi 6E with 2.4 and 5 and 6 gigahertz. You can add 5G connectivity because it has an M.2 slot that'll support an M.2 modem. So you can use your Flipper One as a router, VPN gateway, or bridge between wired and wireless networks. Perfect platform for my man-in-the-middle beast project I've talked about on the show. I love they want it to be all open source. So the software, the hardware, the design specifications for it are all fully open source. I mean, this means the community can keep contributing add-ons conceivably forever because you're not tied by a binary blob that's tied into a kernel version. The fact that it has both a CPU and an MCU in one is kind of like amazing. I don't know a lot of other, I'm sure there are, but not a lot of other platforms. I'm trying to make sure I get the hardware correct, what it has in here. So it's an RK3576 rocket chip for the CPU in a Raspberry Pi RP2350 microcontroller, which is crazy to think you can just carry all that with you.
And it's better than that, Paul. Did I catch it right? You can run it off the MCU with the main CPU shut down?
Yeah. So you can just run them just the MCU if you want, just the Raspberry, the 2350, and it says that's what interfaces with your screen and user interface.
I mean, what I was when they said this is a hard problem they've been grinding on for years, I think I was thinking they were going for something. I think they were understating it.
Yeah.
This is wicked cool.
It has a full HDMI port as well as GPIO.
Of course.
A full HDMI port. And so they
That's
say
insane.
you can use it. One of the use cases is like a backup Linux computer because you can use the USB to connect a mouse and a keyboard and use the HDMI to plug it into a monitor and boot Linux on it. All in like the form factor of a Flipper Zero. It's exciting. However, with this much going on, this much development, I question whether or not it's going to ship and when it's going to actually ship.
Yeah.
And like what problems they're going to have. I mean, obviously they're taking their time. Their article that they posted, they got all the press, talks about a call for developers. They've opened up a developer portal. They're looking for community feedback. They're looking for people to help them build out the Linux distribution for it. They want to make it fully open source and take community involvement for it. So it's just one of the most amazing hardware platforms that we've seen. Again, kind of remains to be seen whether or not it's going to actually ship.
Yeah, if it ships, is there anywhere in there that was the pricing? Is there anything known about the pricing?
I don't think so.
I mean, if it's less than a few $100s, I think it's going to be amazing. If it's more than a few hundred, I think it's going to be tough.
Remains to be seen. Yeah, how much it'll cost.
It's going to have to be under $500, I think. But holy cow, the adoption would be huge. I mean, I'd love it to be something was like $199 or less, but I don't know that that's realistic.
Yeah, I'm seeing if there's speculation as to how much it'll cost.
Was there a GoFundMe?
I don't think so. I mean,
I see the call for help, but I was thinking.
Yeah, no official pricing.
Yeah.
Community speculation is the $300 to $500 range.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll see.
Yeah.
Hey, can I grab a couple more stories, Paul?
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah.
My story number one, I was interested on your take on this. Mitre moves Caldera cybersecurity platform to Apache Foundation for broader open source collaboration.
I think this is a good thing, Jeff, to be honest with you. Right?
Okay.
I think Mitre struggles with resources. In having a project of this, breadth and scope, moving over to the Apache Foundation, which hosts a lot of open source projects and garners a lot of resources for their projects. Although one could argue that many of the Apache Foundation projects have had their share of security vulnerabilities. This move I think is good. I think it's good. I think it'll get the project more resources. I haven't heard people talk about Caldera in some time. Caldera being that framework to test against the Mitre attack framework. So when we had the Mitre attack framework first came out, everyone created like a testing suite, to kind of test all the different aspects of it. Let's see how they define. It's for automated adversary emulation. That's when adversary emulation was like the shiny hot new thing that everyone was talking about.
Right,
So it
which
simulates
is what the
real-world
Mitre
cyber
attack was built
Yeah.
around. I mean, it was a variation on the theme of the
kind of like the
vulnerability
reference
optimization.
Yeah, the reference
What
implementation.
are the bad guys doing? Let's focus on that.
Yeah,
Why should I patch things that the bad guys aren't really paying attention to?
right.
So
I
you don't
haven't-
necessarily see any nefarious motives here. It's
No,
more
Seems
pragmatic.
seems like a good thing.
Okay. My other question was, it's actually one of your stories. I'm just curious, trying to change the mood here a little bit. Your story number 10, Ghost Hackers,
Oh
the cybersecurity mystery that nobody has solved. I've got my own mysteries that never have been solved, and I want to tie this into, it's not really a story, but on Sunday I'll be heading to SaltCon, NACLCon, where the whole premise of this new conference is to talk about the history of hacking. So there's going to be a bunch of old timers there, and I. One of the things that happened to me when I was, as a pen tester at NSA was I was involved with what was at the time the very first breach or incident or compromise, whatever we called it back then, of a government site. It was a compromise, a defacement of the DOJ website. And I was involved in that, and there's a story there, and it's why I'm not at NSA anymore, partially. But I've always been curious as to, I go to all these conferences where there's old timers there. I bet you, what are the odds that, I have been hanging out with people that, 30 years ago perpetrated one of these hacks, like the DOJ hack, which back in those days, it wasn't so much monetizing and there wasn't a lot of nefarious reasons. It was more bragging rights and, hey, look what I can do type of thing.
I breached this thing, I stole some stuff, and it's the movie Hackers, right? I breached some stuff, I stole some stuff.
It's the movie Hackers, right?
Yeah, to get street cred.
Right, street cred. I'm getting some game cheats. I'm getting free long distance or free, phone.
I hacked the Gibson and stole the Michelangelo virus.
But to your story number 10, nobody knows who the shadow brokers are. It's kind of like Anonymous was big a few years ago. Pretty sure I know, and I'm pretty sure all of us know some of the members of Anonymous.
Sure,
but we don't really talk about it.
We don't know who is behind the
First
shadow
rule
brokers.
of Fight Club.
But here's the thing: the shadow brokers breached NSA in some way, shape, form, or fashion. They got NSA red team tools, and no one has information. I thought this article was going to try and shed some light on it. They do say Joseph Menn did an article with the shadow brokers. Where is that in the article? A brief interview in 404 Media's Joseph Cox. Sorry, I said Joseph Menn. I meant Joseph Cox. Did a brief interview. I'm sure they remained anonymous throughout that interview. But like the fact that we have one of the most significant breaches in cybersecurity history, and we don't know who did it. I mean, it's like the Kennedy assassination of cybersecurity. We don't have any definitive proof or evidence and can point the finger at a person, a government.
I'm okay with that.
Anything.
I'm okay with
I'm
that.
not. It grinds my gears, dude. I want to know. Same thing with the Kennedy assassination. I want to know.
Get used to disappointment.
Yep.
The shadow brokers are the ones who will come out of the darkness.
Well, so I'm going to SaltCon. It starts Sunday.
Yeah. See if you can figure out who the shadow brokers were while you're there, Jeff.
I want to meet the shadow brokers, and I want to meet the people that
who killed Kennedy.
The DOJ hack from 30 years ago. 2026 is a watershed year for me. It's the 30th anniversary of the thing that happened that made me not be at NSA anymore. So, I mean, that's my hidden agenda when I go to SaltCon, talking to a bunch of old timers. On a lighter note, it hopefully it'll be an interesting conference where there's, well, let me say this. I was looking at the schedule today, and like lunch on Monday is sponsored by Mitnick Security. And so I'm like, I chafed at that a little bit. So I was reading the Mitnick Security website and how the company came about, and Mitnick's the world's most famous hacker, yada yada yada. And it still kind of chased me that, may he rest in peace. He's somebody that made a name for himself because of doing stuff illegal, whereas there's people like me that were working on ostensibly the good side, trying to do the right things and don't get the notoriety. But SaltCon is advertised to be the history of hacking. So I am interested in trying to run into people and meet people and hang out with people in a relaxed hacker type of atmosphere. They're trying to emulate the hacker culture. Certainly.
It looked amazing.
And
I
chatted
with
to rub your nose in it, Paul.
No, I know. I was trying to get
go.
there. My schedule just won't allow it.
Same.
My son's graduating from high school. We got a lot going on.
Kid graduating for high school. Kid gets married.
Jeff,
you don't.
Jeff, do us a favor. Hug everybody for us, okay? Please.
Absolutely.
There you go.
Absolutely.
Rock and roll, brother. Rock and roll.
It was funny as I was scrolling through here, Paul. Your number 9?
Number 4. Please say you want to talk about number 4.
Number 9.
I put number 4 in there.
He said
for
number
you,
9. Number 9.
Okay, well, we could look. Yeah, we could talk about number 4, but I also
Let's
want to
talk
talk
about
about number 6 when we're done, just because it was light and it was fun.
But the heavier one is the PQC race.
PQC, which it's
post-quantum cryptography. For those
I know PQC, and it's
along.
like I prepare my brain to shut down, but PQC is actually kind of cool, and we need to keep an eye on it. But I'm like,
well, what I thought was amazingly was, so we're advancing to round 3 to find post-quantum cryptography standardization. That was after 18 months of evaluation. 9 algorithms remain. I love the technical summary, spanning lattice-based, multivariate, MPC in the head, isogeny, and symmetric-based approaches. Teams can now submit updated specs and tweaks with this final evaluation phase, expected to run approximately 2 more years before any new standards emerged. It just makes you appreciate the process that we go through to validate an encryption standard and protocol.
oh yeah,
That's not the first thought that comes to my mind, Paul. But go ahead.
What's your thought, Jeff?
Cryptography is hard.
Yep.
Yeah, that's my first thought, and it's hard to do on a scale such as the internet requires.
okay.
Because we're basically boiling down. I missed this article. I apologize. And I thought that the whole post quantum thing was a done deal. We had the algorithms and we were good to go. And,
Me too.
And they were quantum resistant, which means they were symmetrical, which means they have bigger keys that are just harder to brute force. Whereas public key cryptography is a mathematical problem that is solvable by post-quantum or quantum computing. So I apologize. I haven't read this article. I'd like to read it. But what was phase 1? What was phase 2? What do they mean by phase 3? These are terms that
they went through and they got a set of algorithms that were put in place. They washed some out. They came up with, I could have sworn it was 8 finalists, and that I think was phase 2. But then they, no. Was it 8 finalists?
I'm sorry, but this is for signature-based.
Oh, okay.
Digital signatures serve an entirely different function. So
right. This is the digital
PQC
signature.
Yeah, that makes more sense now.
Right.
And I think you're right, Jeff, in terms of what they call key encapsulation mechanisms, protecting confidentiality of data in transit, have made more progress to where we have rolled out quantum-resistant algorithms.
So, I mean, as I skim through this really quick, it looks like the last ones that fell apart were in 2022, and they've come up with some replacements since then, and they've been working on them since 24 to make sure they were cutting the mustard, which kind of goes back to your point of how long they're spending to do a good job of validating. And, you know, I have a crazy thought, is that when are we going to see, you know, AI doing this kind of stuff to help make it the analysis faster without skipping steps?
I don't know. I leave the in-depth discussion on these topics to security cryptography or whatever. They just do such an amazing job.
It's mathematicians. Come on now.
Yeah,
it is.
They're amazing at that. Yeah.
And it's also battle testing them. For example, on your iPhone, iMessage has been post-quantum for 3 years now.
Yes, it has.
Signal has been post-quantum for 3 years. So a lot of it is figuring out which ones aren't. Like there was one called Psych, which was hilarious.
Yep.
That was crackable by a single core Xeon in about an hour. So
that was the one that fell in 22.
Is there an authoritative definition of post-quantum in that context, Josh?
I believe so. I read it a long time ago, though, so I don't remember it. But yes, there is in the standard a definition of post-quantum. Okay.
I mean, I have to, you know, what do they call it when they excuse the judge from a case?
Recuse.
You need to recuse yourself?
I have to recuse myself because it chafes me that NIST is behind making all these decisions, where this used to be, when I was there, NSA's territory.
It did, didn't it?
Yeah.
By the way, I still believe that there is a section of crypto that is NSA's.
Elliptic curve.
NSA's. Yeah.
The one that they cracked. I mean, totally didn't crack.
The one-time pad is not cryptographically breakable. I still swear by it. It doesn't scale well on the internet, but
if it doesn't scale, period. It scales 1-to-1. It doesn't scale 1-to-many. Let's be honest.
But it keeps your data safe.
Yes, but I can't buy something on Amazon.
Does it stop people from running Doom on your device?
Not necessarily.
Go for it. Talk about the radios.
It's a video. What's a video walkie-talkie?
Yeah,
which
I mean,
they look like
cool.
a really cool. But they market they don't market it, but they reference it as a cheapo video walkie-talkies that popped up on everyone's favorite online retailers, which naturally lured in the usual gaggle of reverse engineering enthusiasts. In one engineering enthusiast, Aaron Christoffel, whose name I recognize actually, made these run Doom, which is cool. But why Doom? Why can't we?
Can we do something different? We've done Doom on a pregnancy test, Doom on a radio, Doom on a this, Doom on a that, Doom on a everything. It's like I can run Doom on the
last time you played Doom? Anyone?
Give me 5 minutes. I'll play it in the browser. I mean, it literally plays.
When was the last time you played Doom?
Probably years ago.
20 years ago.
Do we port Doom to these just like you can't rickroll without never going to give you up?
I mean, I guess it shows you can run code on it, but I'm like, can we just do? Is
there
do something more impactful? Like, why can't we put code on a walkie-talkie that lets us intercept communications rather than running Doom on it?
Why can't we do something with Anna Nicole Smith or something like that?
How about global thermonuclear war?
I don't know. Maybe it's me.
Okay. Yeah.
All right. Enough.
How about we do
something productive?
Hey,
that's what I'm calling for. Something productive.
Amen, brother.
All right.
Anyway, that will conclude this edition of Paul's Security Weekly. Thank you, everyone, for listening and watching. We'll see you next time. Over and out.